The storm had driven her to his door, and as Bryony stood shivering on the threshold of the isolated cabin, she didn't know she was begging shelter from the most powerful wolf in the realm. A heavy cloak concealed her body completely, hiding the mark she could never let anyone see. "Can I stay just one night?" she asked the stranger. The man who opened the door was tall, impossibly so, with eyes like winter frost and a face carved from shadow and moonlight. He studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he stepped aside. "One night," he said. She didn't understand why he'd let her in when everyone else had turned her away. Not until morning revealed the truth. He was Calder, the Alpha King of Thornhaven. The one whispered about in fearful tones. The one who had never taken a mate, never shown warmth to anyone. He was hiding in this cabin for the same reason she was running through the wilderness. They were both fleeing something they couldn't escape. Neither of them understood how one night would become forever, or how dangerous forever would be. The rain had been falling for 3 days straight. Bryony had stopped counting the hours somewhere around the second night, when her boots had filled with water and her legs had begun to shake from exhaustion. The Valdrin Mountains were unforgiving in autumn. Everyone knew that, but everyone hadn't been running from what she was running from. She pulled the hood tighter around her face, though there was no one to see her out here. No villages, no travelers, just endless forest and the howling wind that cut through her soaked clothing like knives. Her wolf stirred weakly inside her, too tired to offer warmth. They'd been running for 5 days now, ever since she'd slipped out of her father's estate in the dead of night. Ever since she'd overheard the terms of her sale. Not marriage. Sale. Lord Fenwick of the Eastern Reaches collected rare wolves, those with unusual bloodlines, dormant gifts, abilities that could be exploited. He called it patronage. Everyone knew what it really was, and her father had agreed to give her to him. Bryony stumbled over a root and caught herself against a tree, breathing hard. Her vision was starting to blur. She needed shelter, food, rest. But there was nothing out here except wilderness and the growing certainty that she would die alone in these mountains. That was when she saw the light. It flickered through the trees like a star fallen to earth. A cabin, small, sturdy, built of dark timber with smoke curling from its chimney. Bryony's heart lurched. Someone lived here. Someone with a fire. She moved toward it without thinking, her frozen feet carrying her across the muddy clearing. The cabin was nicer than she'd expected. Not a hunter's shack, but a proper dwelling with glass windows and a covered porch. Whoever owned this place had money, or power. Bryony hesitated at the bottom of the steps. Her wolf growled a warning. Something about the scent of this place, but she was too cold, too desperate to listen. She climbed the stairs and knocked. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then she heard footsteps, heavy and deliberate, approaching from inside. The door swung open. The man standing there stole the breath from her lungs. He was tall. That was her first thought. Taller than any alpha she'd ever seen, with shoulders that filled the doorframe and hair the color of midnight falling past his jaw. But it was his eyes that stopped her cold. Pale gray, almost silver, and completely empty of warmth. He looked at her like she was an insect that had landed on his threshold. "What do you want?" His voice was low, rough, as if he hadn't used it in days. Bryony's teeth were chattering so hard she could barely speak. "Please," she managed. "I've been walking for days. I just need somewhere to wait out the storm." The man's gaze swept over her, taking in her soaked cloak, her trembling frame, the desperate way she clutched the fabric at her throat. His expression didn't change. "There's a village 20 miles east," he said. "You can find shelter there." "I won't survive 20 miles. The words came out sharper than she intended. "Please, can I stay just one night? I'll leave at first light. I won't be any trouble." Something shifted in those cold eyes. Not compassion. Something else. Curiosity, maybe, or recognition. He studied her for a long moment, and Bryony felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. Her wolf cowered inside her, which had never happened before. Whatever this man was, he was dangerous. But so was the storm. And so was what waited for her, if she turned back. One night, he said finally, "You sleep by the fire, you don't touch anything, and in the morning, you're gone." Relief flooded through her so intensely she nearly collapsed. "Thank you. Thank you so much." The man stepped aside to let her enter, and Bryony walked into the warmth of the cabin, not knowing she had just stepped into the arms of the Alpha King himself. The fire was the most beautiful thing Bryony had ever seen. She huddled before it, her cloak spread on the floor to dry, her frozen fingers slowly coming back to life. The cabin was sparse but comfortable. A single room with a bed in one corner, a small kitchen in another, and a worn armchair positioned near the hearth. Books were stacked everywhere, on the floor, on the windowsill, on a desk cluttered with papers. The man who'd let her in sat in the armchair, watching her with those unsettling silver eyes. He hadn't spoken since allowing her entry, and the silence was beginning to feel heavy. "I'm Bryony," she offered, keeping her voice soft. "I never thanked you properly." "You did," he said flatly. "Twice." She flushed. "Right. Sorry." More silence. Bryony pulled her knees to her chest, acutely aware that she was still wearing her heavy traveling clothes. She couldn't remove them. Not in front of him. Not in front of anyone. "You're running from something," the man said. It wasn't a question. Bryony's pulse spiked. "What makes you say that?" "You're an Omega alone in the mountains during storm season. You're terrified, but determined. And you nearly fainted with relief when I agreed to shelter you." His head tilted slightly. No one flees into the Valdrin wilderness unless they're desperate. He was observant, dangerously so. "It's not your concern," Bryony said carefully. "I'll be gone in the morning. You'll never see me again." "Good." He rose from the chair and moved toward the kitchen. "There's bread and dried meat in the cupboard. Take what you need. The privy is behind the cabin. Don't wander beyond the tree line." Bryony blinked at his retreating back. "You're not going to ask what I'm running from?" He paused but didn't turn around. "No." "Why not?" Now he did turn, and something that looked almost like weariness crossed his face before vanishing beneath the ice. "Because I don't care." The words should have stung. Instead, they felt like a gift. He didn't want to know her secrets. He didn't want anything from her, except her absence come morning. She could work with that. Bryony ate her fill of bread and salted venison, drank water from a clay pitcher, and eventually curled up on the rug before the fire. The man returned to his chair with a book, ignoring her completely. She should have felt unsafe, alone with a strange alpha in the middle of nowhere. But her wolf had settled into an uneasy calm, and despite his coldness, the man had shown her nothing but grudging hospitality. As her eyes grew heavy, Bryony found herself studying him in the firelight. He was beautiful in the way a blade was beautiful. Sharp, cold, made for violence. But there was something else beneath the surface, a weariness that mirrored her own. "What's your name?" she murmured, half asleep. The fire crackled. She thought he wouldn't answer. Then, quiet as snow falling. "Calder." She tucked the name away and let the darkness take her. In the morning, everything changed. Bryony woke to pale sunlight streaming through the windows and the sound of voices outside. Male voices, at least 3 of them, speaking in urgent tones. She sat up quickly, her heart racing. Had her father's men found her already? Had Lord Fenwick sent trackers? But the voices weren't angry. They were deferential. "Your Majesty, the Council demands your return. You've been gone for nearly a month. The northern clans are growing restless. They need their king." Bryony's blood turned to ice. "Your Majesty. Their king." She scrambled to her feet just as the cabin door opened. Calder stepped inside, and behind him she caught a glimpse of 3 men in formal riding clothes, bearing the silver crest of Thornhaven on their chests. Calder's eyes found hers immediately. "You're awake," he said. Bryony couldn't speak. couldn't breathe. The Alpha King of Thornhaven, the most powerful wolf in the realm. The ruler whispered about in every pack from here to the sea, and she had slept on his floor. Bryony dropped into a curtsy so deep her knees nearly touched the floor. Your Majesty, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Calder's expression remained unchanged. Rise. She straightened on shaking legs, her mind racing through every word she'd spoken the night before. She'd been informal, almost casual. She'd demanded shelter from the Alpha King like he was a common farmer. Forgive me, she stammered. If I'd realized who you were, I never would have imposed. I'll leave immediately. You'll stay. The words hit her like a slap. What? Calder dismissed the men outside with a sharp gesture, then closed the door. When he turned back to her, his face was hard as granite. Those were my advisors. They've been searching for me for weeks. Now they've found me, and they've seen you. He moved closer, and Bryony forced herself not to retreat. Do you understand what that means? She shook her head, mute with fear. It means questions, Calder said. An unmated Omega alone in my cabin. The court will talk. The nobles will scheme. And your presence here will become a scandal that undermines everything I've worked to build. Bryony's stomach dropped. I'll tell them nothing happened. I'll explain that I only sought shelter from the storm. No one will believe that. His voice was bitter. An Alpha and Omega, alone together for a night. There's only one assumption anyone will make. He was right. Bryony knew he was right. In the eyes of polite society, she was already ruined. Not that she had any reputation left to protect. Then what do you want from me? She asked quietly. Calder studied her for a long moment, and she saw calculations running behind those silver eyes. You have two choices, he said. The first is that I give you gold and a horse, and you disappear into the wilderness to face whatever you were running from. Bryony's heart clenched. Lord Fenwick's estates, the collection of rare wolves, a fate worse than death. And the second? She whispered. You come with me to Thornhaven. You pose as my chosen companion until the political situation stabilizes. In exchange, I'll provide you with protection, comfort, and safety from whoever sent you running into these mountains. Bryony stared at him. You want me to pretend to be your mate? My companion, Calder corrected sharply. Not my mate. Never that. I will never take a true mate. This would be an arrangement, a performance. Nothing more. The vehemence in his voice startled her. Most alphas spent their lives searching for their fated mate. The bond was considered sacred, the deepest connection two wolves could share, but Calder spoke of it like a curse. Why? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Why would you never take a mate? His jaw tightened. That's not your concern. It is if you want me to play act as your lover in front of the entire kingdom. For a moment she thought he might strike her. The air between them crackled with tension, but then something shifted in his expression. Not softening exactly, but a crack in the ice. My bloodline carries a burden, he said quietly. One that makes true mating impossible for me. That's all you need to know. Bryony heard the pain beneath the words. Whatever his secret was, it had wounded him deeply. If I agree to this, she said slowly, what would you expect from me? Public appearances, state dinners, the occasional performance of affection when required. His tone was clinical, detached. In private, we would be strangers. You'd have your own chambers, your own servants. I would make no demands on you beyond what's necessary for the deception. No demands, no expectations. Safety without the cage of true possession. It was more than her own family had ever offered. And when the political situation stabilizes, Bryony asked, what happens to me then? You'll be free to leave. I'll provide you with enough wealth to start over anywhere you choose. A new name, a new life, far from whoever you're running from. Freedom. The word tasted like hope, but there were still questions, still dangers. What if someone recognizes me? Bryony said. What if they discover who I really am? Calder's eyes narrowed. And who are you, really? Bryony hesitated. She could lie, invent some story about a minor pack, a family falling, nothing extraordinary. But something in his gaze told her he would see through it. I'm no one important, she said finally. But there are wolves who want to own me, and they won't stop searching. Then we'll ensure they never find you. His voice carried absolute certainty. While you're under my protection, no one will touch you. I swear it on my crown. The weight of that oath settled over her like a cloak. An Alpha King's word was law. If he swore to protect her, he would. Bryony drew a slow breath. She thought of the storm that had nearly killed her. She thought of Lord Fenwick's cold smile and her father's indifference. She thought of all the years she'd spent hiding, running, waiting for someone to see her as more than a commodity to be traded. Calder was offering her a mask to wear, a role to play. But beneath that mask, she would be safe. Cold over cruelty, she thought. I'll choose cold over cruelty every time. I accept, she said. Calder nodded once, brisk and businesslike. Then gather your things. We leave for Thornhaven within the hour. As he turned away, Bryony caught a glimpse of something in his expression. Relief, perhaps, or gratitude. But it vanished so quickly she might have imagined it. She didn't know it yet, but she had just bound her fate to a king who was hiding secrets far darker than her own. The palace of Thornhaven rose from the mountainside like a fortress carved by giants. Towers of black stone pierced the clouds, and banners bearing the silver wolf crest snapped in the wind. Bryony had heard stories about this place, but nothing had prepared her for its brutal beauty, or for the crowds that gathered to watch their king's return. They're staring, Bryony murmured as the carriage passed through the main gates. They're curious, Calder replied without looking at her. Their king has been absent for a month. Now he returns with a mysterious Omega at his side. Of course they're staring. Bryony pulled her cloak tighter, grateful for the hood that shadowed her face. If anyone from her father's territory recognized her, this fragile safety would shatter. The carriage stopped before the palace steps, and Calder descended first. He turned and offered his hand to help her down, and Bryony hesitated. This was the first time he'd touched her since that night in the cabin. His fingers closed around hers and she nearly gasped. His skin was ice cold. Not cool the way some people ran cold, but genuinely frigid, as if winter lived beneath his flesh. Calder's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He'd noticed her reaction. Come, he said, releasing her hand the moment her feet touched the ground. We have appearances to maintain. The next few hours passed in a blur of introductions, fittings, and instructions. Bryony was given chambers adjacent to the king's own suite, connected by a private door that could be locked from either side. Her rooms were larger than her father's entire house, filled with velvet furniture and silk curtains and a bed so soft she wanted to weep. A team of servants arrived to attend her. Unlike what she'd expected, they weren't suspicious or hostile. They were efficient, respectful, and utterly incurious about her origins. His Majesty selected us personally, the head attendant explained. A tall woman named Orin with kind eyes and gray-streaked hair. We ask no questions. We see nothing that isn't meant to be seen. Bryony understood. Calder had chosen servants who knew how to keep secrets. That night, a soft knock came at the connecting door. Bryony opened it to find Calder standing in the doorway, dressed simply in a dark shirt and trousers. Without his formal coat and crown, he looked younger, almost vulnerable. May I come in? He asked. She stepped aside, surprised by the courtesy. He was the king. He could go anywhere he pleased. Calder entered and moved to the window, staring out at the moonlit mountains. The silence stretched between them, but it felt different than before. Less hostile, more uncertain. There's something I need to explain, he said finally. About the performance we'll need to maintain. I'm listening. He turned to face her, and Bryony saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands were clasped behind his back as if to keep them still. The court will expect certain intimacies between us. Nothing scandalous, but enough to suggest a genuine connection. We'll need to be comfortable with proximity. Casual touches. Perhaps dancing at formal events. Bryony nodded slowly. I understand. Do you? His eyes searched her face. I won't force anything upon you. If any aspect of this arrangement becomes unbearable, you need only say so. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. For all his coldness, Calder seemed genuinely concerned about her comfort. I've endured worse than holding hands at dinner parties, Bryony said quietly. A shadow passed across his features. Pain, perhaps, or recognition. Who hurt you? The question was soft, almost gentle. Bryony looked away. It doesn't matter now. It does to me. She met his gaze, startled by the intensity there. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Calder crossed the distance between them, moving slowly, giving her every chance to retreat. He stopped an arm's length away. May I? He asked, raising one hand. Bryony didn't know what he was asking permission for, but she nodded anyway. His cold fingers brushed her cheek, feather-light. The touch sent shivers down her spine, not from fear, but from something else entirely. Something warm blooming in her chest despite the ice of his skin. You're safe here, Calder said. Whatever came before, whatever you're hiding beneath that cloak you refuse to remove, it doesn't matter. While you're under my protection, no one will hurt you again. Bryony's throat tightened with emotion she couldn't name. Why do you care? She whispered. You said this was just an arrangement. His hand fell away. The mask slid back into place. Perhaps I see something of myself in you, he said. Someone running from a fate they didn't choose. Before she could respond, he turned and walked back to the connecting door. Good night, Bryony. The door closed softly behind him. Bryony stood frozen in the moonlight, her cheek still tingling where he'd touched her, and wondered what she'd gotten herself into. The weeks that followed taught Bryony the rhythm of palace life, formal breakfasts with visiting dignitaries, afternoon audiences where she sat beside Calder's throne, silent but present. Evening dinners that stretched for hours while nobles competed for the king's attention. Through it all, Calder played his role flawlessly. A hand at the small of her back as they entered the great hall, fingers brushing hers across the dinner table. The occasional whispered comment meant only for her ears, designed to make onlookers assume intimacy. But the strangest part was what happened in private. He visited her chambers every night, not for anything improper. He simply appeared at the connecting door after the servants had gone, and they would sit together by the fire, talking about nothing and everything, books they'd read, places they'd seen. The philosophical debates that raged in academic circles. Calder was brilliant. Bryony had known he was powerful, but she hadn't expected the sharp wit, the dry humor that emerged when he let his guard down. He could argue any position and often did, just to watch her rise to the challenge. You're wasted as an Omega, he told her one night. You should have been a scholar, a diplomat. Omegas aren't allowed such positions, Bryony reminded him. They should be. The system is archaic. He leaned back in his chair, firelight dancing across his features. If I had my way, presentation would have no bearing on profession. Why don't you change it? You're the king. Something dark crossed his face. Some battles require more time than I have. It wasn't the first time he'd made cryptic references to time, to limits, to things he couldn't explain. And always, beneath the conversation, Bryony noticed things. The way he never truly relaxed. The way his skin remained perpetually cold no matter how close he sat to the fire. The way he sometimes pressed a hand to his chest when he thought she wasn't looking, as if checking that his heart still beat. You're not well, Bryony said one evening, bowled from a glass of wine. Don't deny it. I've been watching you. Calder went very still. And what have you observed? You're cold. Always cold. You barely sleep. And sometimes, when you think no one's looking, you seem to be in pain. She set down her glass. What's wrong with you, Calder? He was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then quietly, "It's a family condition." "That's what you said before." "It's not an answer." "It's all the answer I can give." Bryony should have let it drop. Their arrangement didn't require honesty. It didn't require anything beyond performance. But somewhere along the way, she'd stopped performing. "I want to help," she said. "Whatever it is, maybe I can help." Calder looked at her then, really looked, and Bryony saw something fracture behind those silver eyes. Longing, desperation, the terrible weight of carrying a burden alone for far too long. "You can't help," he said hoarsely. "No one can." "Let me try." He stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his chair. "You don't understand. Getting close to me is dangerous. Caring about me is dangerous. This arrangement was supposed to protect us both, but I've been selfish. Coming here every night, pretending we could be—" He stopped himself, jaw clenched. "Pretending we could be what?" Bryony stood too, closing the distance between them. "Friends," he said roughly. "Companions. More." The word more hung in the air between them. Bryony's heart was pounding. She knew she should step back, protect herself. Remember that this was temporary, that she was just a convenient solution to a political problem. Instead, she reached up and touched his face. The cold of his skin bit into her palm, but she didn't pull away. Calder's eyes fluttered closed and a shudder ran through him. "You're so warm," he breathed. "How are you so warm? Is that bad?" "No." His hand came up to cover hers, pressing her palm more firmly against his cheek. "It's the best thing I've felt in years." They stood like that for a long moment, breathing together in the firelight. Then Calder gently removed her hand and stepped back. "I should go," he said. "Stay." The word escaped before she could stop it. His eyes widened. "Bryony." "Not for anything improper," she added quickly, her cheeks flushing. "Just stay. You look so tired. When was the last time you actually slept?" He laughed bitterly. "I don't remember." "Then stay. Sleep here. I'll tend the fire, keep the room warm for you." She could see him warring with himself. Duty against desire, caution against need. Need won. They lay on opposite sides of the bed, fully clothed, with a careful distance between them. But sometime in the night, Bryony woke to find Calder curled against her back, his arm around her waist, his cold face pressed into her hair. He was sleeping. Actually sleeping. His breathing deep and even for the first time since she'd met him. Bryony lay very still, afraid to wake him, and admitted to herself the truth she'd been avoiding. She was falling in love with him. 3 months into their arrangement, the council declared the political situation stabilized. "The northern clans have signed the new treaty," the head advisor announced during the morning audience. "The Eastern Alliance is secure, and your presence with Lady Bryony has quieted the succession concerns. The nobles believe you'll produce heirs soon enough." Bryony sat frozen beside the throne, her heart turning to stone. This was what they'd agreed to. Once things stabilized, she would be free to leave. A new name, a new life, enough gold to disappear forever. It was everything she'd wanted. So why did it feel like a death sentence? That night, Calder didn't come to her chambers. Bryony waited by the fire until long past midnight, but the connecting door remained closed. She told herself it didn't matter. She told herself she'd known this was temporary. She told herself 1,000 lies, but none of them stopped the tears that slipped down her cheeks. In the morning, she began packing. She was folding the few personal items she'd acquired when the connecting door finally opened. Calder stood in the doorway looking worse than she'd ever seen him. His face was gaunt, his eyes shadowed, his skin so pale it was almost translucent. "What are you doing?" he asked hoarsely. "Leaving." Bryony didn't turn around. "The political situation is stable. Our arrangement is complete. You don't need me anymore." "Bryony." "It's fine, Calder. You've been more than generous. The gold you promised will set me up comfortably. I'll find somewhere far from here. Somewhere no one knows." "Stop." His voice cracked on the word. Please stop. She turned then, and what she saw on his face stole her breath. Anguish, desperation, and something else. Something that looked terrifyingly like love. Don't go, Calder said. I know I have no right to ask. I know this isn't what we agreed to. But please, Bryony, don't leave. Why? She heard the tremor in her own voice. You've been avoiding me. You didn't come last night. I thought. I was trying to protect you. He laughed bitterly. I've been trying to protect you since the moment you knocked on my door, and I've failed spectacularly. Protect me from what? He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping just before her. This close, she could see the fine tremor in his hands, the rapid pulse at his throat. From me, he said. From what I feel for you. From the curse that will destroy us both if I admit the truth. Bryony's heart stuttered. What truth? Calder's eyes met hers, silver and storm and endless sorrow. I love you. The words seemed to tear themselves from his throat. I've tried not to. I've fought it every single day. But you're brave and brilliant and kind, and you look at me like I'm more than a monster wearing a crown, and I love you, Bryony. Goddess help me. I love you. Joy and terror collided in her chest. Calder. You need to run. His hands gripped her shoulders, urgent. You need to get as far from me as possible because now that I've said it, now that I've admitted it, the curse will... He didn't finish. His eyes went wide. His hands flew to his chest, and a sound escaped him. Something between a groan and a howl as he crumpled to his knees. Calder! Bryony dropped beside him. What's happening? What's wrong? His skin was colder than ice now. Frost was actually forming on his eyelashes, his lips turning blue. But worse than the cold was what she saw in his eyes. His wolf was rising. Not the controlled presence of a shifter in command of his beast. This was something primal, savage, a creature fighting to claw its way to the surface. Run, Calder gasped. The curse, my bloodline. When we love, the wolf takes over. We become feral, mindless beasts. My father. His body convulsed. When his eyes opened again, they were no longer silver. They were gold. Feral gold. My father loved my mother. He forced out through gritted teeth. He became a monster. They had to kill him. And now, another convulsion. A snarl that was more animal than man. Now I'll become one too. Bryony watched in horror as the man she loved began to lose himself to the beast within. Run! Calder snarled again, but his voice was barely human now. Before I hurt you. Bryony didn't move. She watched the frost spread across his skin, watched his fingers curl into claws, and watched the man she loved disappear beneath the rising tide of the beast. And she made a choice. No. She knelt before him, placing her hands on either side of his face. His skin burned with cold, so frigid it seared her palms. But she didn't let go. Bryony, please. Tears were freezing on his cheeks. I don't want to hurt you. I can't control it. When the wolf takes over completely, I won't remember who you are. I won't remember anything. Then remember this. She pressed her forehead to his. I love you too. His whole body shuddered. The gold in his eyes flickered, silver bleeding through for just a moment. You can't, he groaned. If you love me, it only makes it worse. The curse feeds on love, both sides of it. The more we feel, the faster I lose myself. Then I'll find a way to break it. There is no way. Generations have tried. Every king who's ever loved has fallen to the beast. My father lasted 3 days before they had to put him down like a rabid animal. His voice broke. I won't let that happen with you watching. The door burst open. Palace guards flooded into the room, swords drawn, and their faces pale with terror. Your Majesty! The captain stepped forward. We heard... He stopped, taking in the scene. The frost, the claws. The king on his knees with golden eyes. Goddess above, it's happening. The curse has activated. Restrain him! Another guard shouted, "Before he turns completely." "No." Bryony threw herself between Calder and the advancing guards. "Don't touch him." "My lady, you don't understand. Once the transformation completes, he'll be beyond reason. He'll kill everyone in this palace, starting with you." I said no. Something was building inside her. Something she'd spent her entire life suppressing. The thing her father had beaten her for. The thing Lord Fennec had wanted to exploit. The marks on her skin began to glow. Silver light pulsed beneath her cloak, tracing patterns across her arms, her shoulders, her back. The secret she'd hidden since childhood. The truth that had made her an outcast, a commodity, a prize to be sold. "What is that?" The captain stumbled backward. "What are you?" Bryony pulled off her cloak, revealing skin covered in intricate silver markings that swirled like moonlight given form. They pulsed with her heartbeat, growing brighter as her emotions intensified. "I'm a lunar healer," she said, "the last of the Silvervein bloodline." Gasps echoed through the room. The Silverveins were legend. Moon-blessed wolves with the power to soothe feral beasts, to anchor wild magic, to heal wounds that should be fatal. They'd been hunted to extinction centuries ago, their bloodline supposedly lost forever. But Bryony's mother had been the last surviving daughter of that line, and she'd passed the gift to her child before being driven away. "That's why my father sold me," Bryony said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. "That's why Lord Fennec wanted me in his collection. He knew what I was. He wanted to use my power for his own purposes." "Lady Bryony." The captain's voice was hushed with awe. "If you truly are what you claim, you might be able to stop the king's transformation. The old texts speak of lunar healers who could calm the beast within." Bryony turned back to Calder. He was barely conscious now, the gold completely overtaking his eyes, his body racked with tremors as the wolf fought to emerge. "I've never used my power," she admitted. "My father bound it when I was a child. Beat me whenever the marks appeared. I don't know how to control it." "Then learn." The captain's voice was desperate. "Learn now, or we'll be forced to kill him." Bryony dropped to her knees beside Calder. Her hands found his face again, and she let the light flow freely for the first time in her life. It hurt. Goddess. It hurt. Like lightning coursing through her veins, like her blood had turned to molten silver. But beneath the pain, she felt something else. A connection. A thread of light extending from her heart to his, wrapping around the snarling beast inside him. "Come back to me," she whispered. "Calder, please. Follow my voice. Follow the light." The beast howled. She felt its rage, its hunger, and its desperate desire to break free and destroy everything in its path. But she also felt the man beneath it, the man who'd given her shelter. The man who'd promised she'd be safe. The man who'd fallen in love with her despite knowing it might kill him. "I'm here." She poured everything she had into the connection. "I'm not leaving. I love you, and I'm not leaving." The gold in his eyes flickered. Silver bled through. Back and forth. Wolf and man. Beast and king. Bryony. Her name, torn from his throat like a prayer. That's it. Tears streamed down her face, mingling with the silver light. "Stay with me. Stay." The beast lunged one final time, and Bryony met it with everything she had. Every moment of kindness Calder had shown her. Every night they'd spent talking by the fire. Every gentle touch, every whispered word, every heartbeat of the love that had grown between them. The light exploded outward. When it faded, Calder was slumped in her arms, unconscious but breathing. The frost was gone from his skin. His fingers were fingers again, not claws. And his eyes, when they fluttered open moments later, were pure silver. "Bryony." His voice was hoarse, confused. "What happened?" "The wolf. It was gone," she breathed. "Or at least, contained. I think I anchored it." "How?" She showed him her arms, the silver markings still glowing faintly. "Apparently I'm not as ordinary as I thought." Calder stared at her in wonder. Then, slowly, a smile broke across his face. The first genuine smile she'd ever seen from him. Extraordinary, he murmured. You're absolutely extraordinary. 3 weeks later, Bryony stood in the palace courtyard, watching Lord Fenwick being led away in chains. He'd arrived 2 days after Calder's transformation, flanked by soldiers, demanding the return of his property. He'd been so confident, so certain that a contract signed by her father gave him rights over her body and her power. He hadn't expected to find the Alpha King fully recovered and furious. The trial had been swift. Fenwick's crimes extended far beyond his pursuit of Bryony. His collection of rare wolves had been a front for something far darker. Experimentation, exploitation, the systematic abuse of those too vulnerable to fight back. He'll spend the rest of his life in the deepest dungeon we have, Calder said, coming to stand beside her. It's more mercy than he deserves. Bryony nodded, feeling something loosen in her chest. The shadow that had chased her for years was finally gone. And my father? Stripped of his lands and titles, exiled to the northern wastes. Calder's hand found hers. He'll trouble you no more. They watched the prisoner's wagon disappear through the gates. Then Calder turned to face her, his expression shifting from grim satisfaction to something softer. The healers have finished their examination, he said. They believe your anchoring is permanent. The curse isn't broken exactly, but your presence stabilizes my wolf completely. As long as we're bonded, the beast can never fully emerge. As long as we're bonded, Bryony repeated. That sounds rather permanent. It could be. He reached up to cup her face and she marveled at the warmth of his skin, no longer ice cold, no longer fighting a war within himself. If you want it to be. Calder. I know we started this as an arrangement, a performance, but somewhere along the way, it became real for me. He pressed his forehead to hers. You saved my life, Bryony. Not just from the curse, but from the cold, empty existence I'd resigned myself to. You made me believe I could be more than a monster waiting to happen. Bryony's eyes burned with tears. You were never a monster. You were a man carrying an impossible burden alone. All I did was refuse to let you carry it anymore. Then don't stop. His voice dropped to a whisper. Stay with me. Not as a companion or a performance, as my mate, my true mate, my queen. She answered him with a kiss. It was nothing like their careful, performative touches from before. This was real, desperate, a claiming and a surrender all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, the silver marks on Bryony's skin were glowing bright enough to illuminate the courtyard. Is that a yes? Calder asked, laughing. That's a yes. The wedding took place at the next full moon, when Bryony's power was strongest. She walked down the aisle with her marks uncovered, glowing silver in the moonlight, and the kingdom didn't whisper in confusion. They cheered. In the months that followed, Bryony established the first academy for lunar healing in centuries, training others who carried dormant traces of the Silvervein bloodline. Calder reformed the laws that had allowed wolves like Lord Fenwick to exploit the vulnerable. Together, they built something neither had ever dared hope for. A home. A family, a future. On their first anniversary, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the mountains where they'd first met, Calder pulled her close and pressed a kiss to her hair. Do you ever regret it? He asked. Knocking on that cabin door? Bryony thought about the storm that had nearly killed her, the desperate gamble that had led her to his threshold, the single question that had changed everything. Can I stay just one night? Never. She said. Not for a single moment. She'd come looking for shelter from the rain. She'd found something far more precious. She'd found home. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe for more. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and they mean more than you know.